They packed his bags while he was putting his 5-year-old twins to bed. They looked at the former Navy SEAL like he was a stray dog tracking mud onto their Persian rugs. Handing him a $10,000 check, they told him to walk. They thought he was broke. They were wrong. The Kensington estate was less of a home and more of a museum. It smelled of lemon polish, old paper, and Patricia's suffocating gardenia perfume. Elliot hated it. Emily had hated it too. But it was the first anniversary of her passing, and Elliot had made a promise to his wife that he would try to keep her parents in their grandchildren's lives. He was in the guest suite, kneeling on the hardwood floor, buttoning Mia's coat. Beside him, Leo was intensely focused on tying his own shoelaces, his small fingers fumbling with the strings. "Almost got it, buddy," Elliot said softly. His voice was a low, steady rumble. "I want to go home, Dad," Leo whispered, finally pulling the loops tight. He didn't look up. "I know, we're leaving now." Elliot stood. He was a big man, built like a brick wall, wearing faded denim and a plain black Henley that had seen better days. He didn't look like he belonged in a room with silk wallpaper and antique French dressers. Also, he picked up his canvas duffel bag. It felt oddly light. He unzipped it. Half of his clothes were missing. His shaving kit was gone. Elliot stared at the half-empty bag. A cold, familiar stillness settled over him. It was the same hyper-focused calm that used to drop over him in the back of a Black Hawk helicopter right before a night raid. He zipped the bag shut. "Hold hands," he told the twins. They walked out of the guest suite and down the sweeping mahogany staircase. The house was dead quiet. No clinking of silverware, no polite, forced conversation, just the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the foyer. William and Patricia Kensington were waiting in the study at the bottom of the stairs. William stood by the fireplace, a glass of scotch in one hand. He wore a cashmere sweater and a look of deep, practiced pity. Patricia sat in a wing-back leather chair, her posture rigid, her face pulled tight by recent cosmetic work and perpetual disapproval. On the heavy oak desk between them sat a manila envelope and 2 of Elliot's missing suitcases. "Come in, Elliot," William said. He didn't look at the twins. "Patricia, take the children to the kitchen for some ice cream." "They're fine right here," Elliot said. He didn't cross the threshold. He stood in the doorway, his broad shoulders filling the frame, one hand resting lightly on the back of Leo's neck. William sighed, swirling his scotch. "Suit yourself. I'll make this brief. You're leaving." Elliot didn't blink. "We are. The bags are packed." "No," Patricia corrected, her voice sharp as cracked ice. "You are leaving. The children are staying." Elliot looked at his mother-in-law, then at the 2 suitcases sitting on the floor. "Is that right?" "Let's be adults about this, Elliot," William said, setting his glass on the mantel. He picked up the manila envelope and held it out. "We know things have been hard since Emily died. You're drifting. You live in that cabin. You don't have a steady job. You do odd contracting work, security consulting, whatever you call it. It's no environment for 2 growing children. They need stability. They need a legacy. They need their father," Elliot said. The words were quiet, but the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. William's jaw tightened. A father who can barely afford groceries, a veteran with God knows what kind of trauma lurking under the surface? We won't allow it. We've already filed an emergency ex parte motion for temporary custody. Our lawyers have been working on it all week. A judge signed off on it an hour ago. Elliot's eyes flicked to the envelope. He read the room in milliseconds. The exits, the distance between him and William, the heavy brass poker by the fireplace. He felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, but he boxed it away, shoving it deep down. Violence wouldn't win this. Not here. "A judge signed off on taking my kids because I wear cheap boots?" Elliot asked. "A judge signed off because you have 0 provable assets, 0 fixed income, and a documented history of high-risk military combat." William snapped, his patience evaporating. "You have nothing, Elliot. Emily married you out of some misguided rebellion. But she's gone now. The game is over." Patricia leaned forward, her diamonds catching the lamplight. "Take the envelope, Elliot. There's a cashier's check inside for $10,000. Consider it severance. Go find a cheap apartment. Get on your feet. If you fight us, we will drag you through family court until you are completely bankrupt. We will bury you in legal fees. You'll lose them anyway, and you'll starve doing it. Leo pressed his face against Elliot's leg. Mia started to cry, a quiet, frightened whimpering. Elliot looked down at his daughter. He reached down and scooped her up with one arm, settling her against his chest. She buried her face in his neck. He looked back up at the Kensingtons. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He didn't try to explain that he drove an old truck and lived in a modest cabin because Emily had loathed the toxic, suffocating wealth she grew up in. She had wanted a simple life. Elliot had given it to her. "You think you hold all the cards," Elliot said. It wasn't a question. "We own the table," William replied coldly. "Leave the kids. Take the check." Elliot reached out and took the manila envelope from William's hand. William smirked, a fleeting look of triumph crossing his face. Everyone had a price. Everyone broke when the pressure was high enough. Elliot didn't open the envelope. He folded it in half, then in quarters, his thick fingers snapping the thick paper. He dropped it onto the floor, right into the puddle of melted snow that had dripped off his boots. "Grab your bag, Leo," Elliot said. "Elliot, you are in violation of a court order," William warned, his voice rising, his face flushing red. "If you walk out that door with them, I will call the police. I will have you arrested for kidnapping." Elliot held William's gaze. "Make the call, Bill." He turned his back on them. He walked out of the study, through the foyer, and out the heavy front doors into the freezing November rain. He didn't look back. The rain hammered against the roof of Elliot's 2008 Ford F-150. The heater hummed, blowing warm air over the twins in the back seat. They had fallen asleep 5 miles down the highway, exhausted by the tension they didn't fully understand, but felt in their bones. Elliot drove with one hand on the steering wheel, his eyes scanning the dark, slick asphalt. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Then, a third time, he glanced at the caller ID, unknown, probably the local precinct, fielding a frantic call from William Kensington about a kidnapped legacy. Elliot tapped the screen, routing the call to a secure server. He didn't have time for local cops just yet. He had his own calls to make. He pressed a button on his dashboard console. The generic radio interface blinked out, replaced by a sleek, matte black touchscreen that definitely didn't come factory standard in a 2008 pickup. "Connect to Donovan," Elliot said. The system chimed. 3 seconds later, a crisp voice filled the cabin. "It's Sunday night, Elliot. This better be good." "They made their move, Don," Elliot said, keeping his voice low so he wouldn't wake the kids. A heavy sigh came through the speakers. Donovan Hayes wasn't just Elliot's older brother. He was the managing partner of one of the most ruthless corporate law firms in Chicago. "The Kensingtons?" "Yeah. Ambushed me after dinner. Tried to hand me a 10 grand severance check for my kids. Said they had an ex-parte order signed by a judge tonight." "A Sunday night?" Donovan's tone shifted from annoyed to surgical. They must have a judge in their pocket, probably golfs with William." "Did they show you the paperwork?" "Didn't bother reading it. Left it on their floor." "Good. If it's a dirty order, we'll crush it by Tuesday." "Where are the kids?" "With me, asleep in the back." "Keep them there. If the cops pull you over, you comply. But you say absolutely nothing. I'll have my team start drafting an injunction right now." "What's the play, Elliot? You want me to just squash this? Or do you want to break them?" Elliot watched the yellow lines blur past. He thought about the way Patricia had looked at Leo, not like a grandson, but like an asset. He thought about the threat to bankrupt him. "Break them," Elliot said softly. "About damn time," Donovan chuckled dryly. "Emily wanted a quiet life, Elliot. She didn't want you to be a doormat. It's time to take off the flannel and put on the suit." Elliot disconnected the call. He took the next exit, leaving the highway behind and turning onto a winding, unlit mountain road. The Kensingtons thought Elliot was a washed-up veteran, living off a paltry pension and odd jobs. They thought he was broke because he dressed in thrift store clothes and lived in a timber cabin. They didn't know about Apex Solutions. After leaving the SEAL teams, Elliot hadn't just done security consulting. He had built a cybersecurity architecture that revolutionized how the Department of Defense encrypted drone feeds. He had started the company in his garage, scaled it with a few trusted operators, and quietly sold the defense contracting division 3 years ago to a massive aerospace conglomerate. The sale price was $200 million. Elliot had placed the money into a labyrinth of blind trusts and offshore holding companies managed by Donovan. Not because he was hiding it from the government. He paid his taxes meticulously, but because he was hiding it from the world. Emily had grown up suffocated by money. She had watched her parents use wealth as a weapon to control, manipulate, and destroy. When she married Elliot, she asked for one thing: a normal life. So Elliot bought a modest plot of land in the woods. He built a cabin. He drove his old truck. When he needed to work, he did it from a laptop on the porch. To the world, he was a blue-collar handyman. But Emily was gone, and her parents were trying to use their country club money to steal his children. The truck tires crunched over gravel as Elliot turned onto a private, gated driveway. There was no mailbox, no address marker, just a heavy steel gate flanked by thick pines. Elliot flashed his headlights in a specific sequence. A hidden camera scanned his license plate, cross-referenced his biometric profile through the truck's internal network, and the gate swung open silently. He drove up the winding path, breaking through the tree line. The cabin was exactly as he had left it. Small, rustic, unassuming. But behind it, carved into the side of the mountain and completely invisible from the main road, was the facility. Elliot parked the truck in the barn. He carried Mia in one arm and held Leo's hand with the other, walking them into the cabin. He tucked them into their beds, pulling the heavy quilts up to their chins. "Are we safe here, Dad?" Leo mumbled, his eyes half closed. "Always," Elliot promised, kissing his forehead. He closed their bedroom door. Then he walked to the back of the cabin, opened a standard-looking utility closet, and pressed his thumb against the biometric scanner hidden behind the breaker box. The back wall of the closet hissed, unsealing to reveal a brightly lit, sterile hallway. Elliot walked down the hall and entered his real office. It looked like a miniature command center. Bank of servers hummed against the far wall. 3 massive monitors sat on a polished steel desk. He sat down and cracked his knuckles. He opened a secure terminal and logged into his primary trust accounts. He watched the numbers load: $214,589,341.62. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Donovan. "William just froze your joint checking account with Emily, the one with $4,000 in it. He's trying to starve you out by morning." Elliot let out a short, hollow laugh. It was a classic bully tactic: cut off the victim's resources, induce panic, force a surrender. William Kensington thought he was playing chess against a man who didn't even know the rules. Elliot typed a rapid series of commands into his keyboard. He unfroze the dummy account. He didn't just unfreeze it. He routed a wire transfer of $5 million from one of his holding companies directly into the local community bank account William was trying to block. The sheer volume of the transfer would trigger an automatic flag at the bank, waking up the branch manager and likely causing William's personal banker to have a heart attack come Monday morning. But Elliot wasn't done. He opened a dossier on Kensington Holdings, William's real estate development firm. He had compiled it years ago, just to be safe. It was time to see how much leverage the old man actually had. As the files decrypted, Elliot poured himself a glass of water. He stared at his reflection in the dark window. The grieving widower was gone. The operator was back. "You wanted a war, Bill," Elliot whispered to the empty room. "You just bought one." An engaging story requires a natural flow and precise pacing to draw the reader in. Here's the continuation of Elliot's story. William Kensington liked his coffee black and his Mondays predictable. He sat at the head of the glass conference table in his downtown Chicago high-rise, tapping a Mont Blanc pen against a leather folio. Outside, the city was a hazy sprawl of gray concrete. Inside, the climate control kept the room at a crisp, sterile 68 degrees. His personal banker, a nervous man named Higgins, was sweating through his tailored shirt. Higgins cleared his throat, sliding a tablet across the slick glass. "Mr. Kensington," Higgins started, his voice cracking slightly, "about the joint account you asked us to freeze yesterday evening." William didn't look at the tablet. "Is it locked? Did the pending transactions bounce?" "It's locked, sir. But it didn't bounce." Higgins hesitated. "A wire transfer cleared at 2 in the morning. An inbound transfer." William stopped tapping his pen. He finally looked down. The screen displayed a routing number, a series of routing codes, and a balance, $5,004,012. "That is a clerical error," William said. His voice was flat. "Fix it." "It's not an error. The funds are verified, routed through a corporate holding entity in Delaware. Apex Solutions. The money is sitting in the account, Mr. Kensington. The freeze you requested actually trapped the capital inside." William stared at the numbers. $5 million. Elliot drove a truck with rust on the wheel wells. Elliot bought groceries with coupons. It made no sense. It was a trick, a shell game. Before he could demand a full trace, the heavy oak doors of the conference room swung open. William's secretary didn't get a chance to announce the intrusion. Donovan Hayes walked in. Donovan wore a bespoke charcoal suit that cost more than William's car. He carried no briefcase. He didn't offer his hand. He simply walked to the opposite end of the long glass table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. "You have precisely 3 minutes to explain why you are trespassing in my building, Donovan," William sneered, recovering his composure, "or I will have security throw you out." "Security is currently downstairs reading the federal injunction I just handed them," Donovan replied. His voice was smooth, carrying a lethal kind of polite boredom. He tossed a single manila folder onto the table. It slid precisely to William's fingertips. "What is this?" "That is a motion to vacate your fraudulent ex parte custody order," Donovan said, "filed at 6 a.m. It also contains a formal complaint to the State Bar regarding your lawyer's blatant misrepresentation of facts to a sitting judge. Oh, and a preliminary notice of a defamation suit against you and Patricia." William scoffed, pushing the folder away. "You think you can intimidate me with paperwork? Your brother is a drifter. He has no income, no home suitable for children. A judge has already seen the reality of the situation." "The reality," a new voice said. Elliot stepped into the room. He wasn't wearing faded denim. He wasn't wearing a cheap Henley. He wore a dark navy suit tailored perfectly to his broad frame. His boots were polished leather. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who had dismantled foreign cartels and built a corporate empire, stepping into a boardroom that felt like a child's sandbox. William stood up. "Get out, both of you." Elliot walked slowly around the table. He didn't look angry. That was what unsettled William the most. Elliot looked completely relaxed. "I looked into Kensington Holdings last night, Bill," Elliot said softly. "You've got a massive liquidity problem. You over-leveraged your commercial real estate portfolio to fund the South Side development project. You owe $60 million to creditors by the end of the quarter, and your tenant occupancy is down 20%. William's face drained of color. "How did you—" "It took me 45 minutes, Elliot interrupted. He stopped a few feet from William. "You tried to take my kids because you think you have power. You think money is power. You don't understand either." Elliot reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He dropped it onto the tablet, right over the $5 million bank balance. "That is a letter of intent from Apex Solutions," Elliot said. "We just bought your primary creditor's debt portfolio. I own your loans, Bill. I own the mortgage on this building. I own the paper on your house in Kensington. You're breathing my air." The room was dead silent. The hum of the AC suddenly sounded like a jet engine. "Apex Solutions," William whispered, the name from the bank transfer clicking into place. He looked at the man he had treated like garbage for 5 years, the veteran who fixed his own plumbing, the widower who took the kids camping instead of to country clubs. You own it." "I built it," Elliot corrected. "I sold the defense branch for $200 million. I kept the rest. Emily knew. She hated your world, Bill. She wanted our kids to grow up understanding the value of a dollar, not the price of a human soul. I kept my mouth shut out of respect for her memory. But you crossed the line." William sank back into his chair. He looked like an old, deflated balloon. The smug superiority was gone, replaced by a cold, creeping terror. "Elliot, we just want what's best for the twins," William stammered, his voice losing its edge. "Emily was our daughter." "Don't," Elliot said. The word was a heavy stone dropping into a quiet pond. "Do not use her name to justify your greed. You didn't want the kids. You wanted control. You couldn't control Emily, so you thought you could buy her children." Donovan stood up and buttoned his jacket. "The hearing to vacate your custody order is at 1 o'clock today. 1C, Judge Carter's courtroom. We expect you to be there, William. We expect you to formally withdraw the petition and state on the record that Elliot is a fit and fully capable parent. If you don't..." Elliot leaned down, placing both hands on the glass table. He leaned in close. "If you don't," Elliot whispered, "I will call in every loan. I will foreclose on your properties. I will liquidate Kensington Holdings until you are standing on the street with nothing but the lint in your pockets. You offered me $10,000 to walk away from my children. I'm offering you the chance to keep your life. Take it." Elliot stood up. He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and walked out of the room, Donovan trailing right behind him. William Kensington sat alone in the freezing boardroom, staring at the bank account on the tablet, realizing he had just lost everything. The courthouse smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. Elliot sat on the hard wooden bench in the corridor, staring at the brass hinges on the double doors of courtroom 3B. He checked his watch. 12:50. Leo and Mia were safe back at the cabin, building a fort out of sofa cushions under the watchful eye of a former Navy medic who owed Elliot his life. Elliot had told them he was going to a meeting to sort out the grumpy grandparents. He kept it simple. He protected their peace. Donovan emerged from the stairwell, holding a stack of pristine legal documents. He sat down next to Elliot, dropping the papers onto his lap. "The Kensingtons are here," Donovan said, adjusting his tie. "They just walked through security. Patricia looks like she chewed on a lemon. Oh, William looks like he hasn't slept in a decade." "Good. You sure you want to let them keep the company?" Donovan asked, glancing sideways. "We have the paperwork ready to execute the debt call. You could crush them today, leave them with nothing." Elliot leaned his head back against the plaster wall. He closed his eyes. He thought about Emily. He remembered her laughing in the kitchen, flour on her nose, completely disconnected from the toxic empire her parents had built. She had walked away from it so she wouldn't become it. "No," Elliot said quietly. "If I destroy them, I'm just playing their game. I'm proving them right, that the guy with the biggest checkbook gets to ruin lives. I just want them gone. The debt is a leash. As long as I hold it, they will never come near my kids again." Donovan nodded. "Fair enough, but I'm still billing you my full hourly rate." Elliot smiled faintly. "Send the invoice to Apex." The heavy wooden doors swung open. A bailiff stepped out. "Judge Carter is ready for the Kensington matter." Elliot stood up. He smoothed his jacket and walked into the courtroom. It was empty, save for the judge, the court reporter, and the Kensingtons sitting at the petitioner's table. William and Patricia looked small. The aggressive posture they had held in their mansion 24 hours ago was entirely gone. Patricia stared down at her manicured hands. William refused to make eye contact as Elliot and Donovan took their seats at the respondents' table. Judge Carter, a stern woman with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, flipped open the case file. We are here regarding an emergency ex parte motion for temporary custody filed by William and Patricia Kensington concerning their grandchildren, Judge Carter stated, her voice echoing in the cavernous room. I have just reviewed a highly irregular motion to vacate, filed this morning by Mr. Hayes on behalf of the father, Elliot. She peered over her glasses at William's attorney, a junior partner who looked completely out of his depth. Counselor, your original filing claimed the father was a destitute, unstable individual, posing an immediate physical and financial risk to the minors. Yet the respondent's filing includes certified financial disclosures proving a net worth exceeding $200 million, a stable primary residence, and a spotless psychological evaluation from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Would you care to explain the discrepancy? The junior lawyer stood up, his hands visibly shaking. He looked at William. William gave a slow, defeated nod. Your Honor, the lawyer stammered, my clients have reevaluated the situation. We formally withdraw the petition for emergency custody. Judge Carter's expression darkened. You filed a fraudulent emergency motion, forcing a father to defend his basic parental rights, and now you simply want to withdraw it. The court does not take perjury lightly. Donovan stood up. Your Honor, my client does not wish to pursue sanctions at this time. He simply wants this matter closed with prejudice and a permanent injunction preventing the Kensingtons from filing further frivolous claims regarding the custody of his children. Judge Carter looked at Elliot. Elliot met her gaze steadily, offering a single, respectful nod. She sighed, closing the file. Petition withdrawn. Case dismissed with prejudice. The injunction is granted. Mr. and Mrs. Kensington, you are incredibly lucky this man is more forgiving than I am. Do not waste the court's time again. We are adjourned. The gavel cracked. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Elliot didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He picked up his phone, slipping it into his pocket, and walked toward the aisle. As he passed the petitioner's table, William stood up. Elliot, William said. His voice was cracked, devoid of any arrogance. It was the voice of a beaten man. Can we still see them? For Christmas? For Emily's sake? Elliot stopped. He looked at his former father-in-law. He saw the gray in William's hair, the deep lines of stress framing his mouth. He looked at Patricia, who was quietly weeping into a tissue, the reality of her isolation finally settling in. They had tried to take his life away. They had tried to steal his children. Emily's gone, Bill, Elliot said. His voice wasn't angry. It was just final. You didn't respect her choices when she was alive, and you didn't respect them yesterday. You don't get to use her memory as a bargaining chip anymore. We're their grandparents, Patricia choked out. You're a bank account with a pulse, Elliot replied calmly. You taught me that last night. You measure love and leverage. My kids don't need that. They need a family. He turned and walked down the center aisle, pushing through the heavy double doors into the bright, fluorescent light of the hallway. He didn't look back. The Kensingtons were a closed chapter. They were trapped in their empty mansion, prisoners of their own wealth, holding on to a legacy that meant absolutely nothing. Elliot stepped out of the courthouse and onto the bustling Chicago sidewalk. The November air was sharp and cold, biting at his cheeks, but he breathed it in deeply. The sky was beginning to clear, pale sunlight piercing through the gray clouds. His phone buzzed. It was a picture message from the cabin. Leo and Mia were covered in flour, standing on step stools in the kitchen, grinning at the camera while holding up misshapen chocolate chip cookies. Elliot smiled. A real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He walked to his rented sedan, unlocked it, and got in. He started the engine, shifting into gear. He had a long drive back to the mountains. He had a fort to inspect, cookies to eat, and a life to live. A quiet, simple life, exactly the way he and Emily had planned it. Elliot proved that real power doesn't scream from a mansion, it whispers from the shadows. He protected his kids, honored his late wife, and left his arrogant in-laws holding a worthless empire. What did you think of Elliot's ultimate checkmate against the Kensingtons? Would you have shown them mercy or taken everything they had? Let us know in the comments below. If you loved this story, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more.